The old ship had been there for 40 years. It sat on the hill like a broken finger pointing at the sky. Its nose was buried deep in the rock. Its tail rose high above the ground. The metal was black and strange. No rust ever touched it. No wind ever moved it. It just sat there, silent and waiting. The people of the colony called it the Sentinel. Nobody knew who built it. Nobody knew where it came from. Many had tried to open it over the years. Scientists came with their tools. Engineers came with their machines. Military men came with their explosives. But the ship never opened. It never made a sound. It just kept pointing at the sky, year after year, like it was showing the way to something far away. Park Tae had lived in the shadow of that ship for most of his life. He was an old man now, with gray hair and rough hands. He ran a salvage yard at the bottom of the hill. Every day, he woke up, looked at the ship, and went to work. He fixed broken machines. He sold spare parts. He lived a simple life. Tae had stopped wondering about the ship long ago. It was just part of the landscape now, like the mountains in the distance, like the red dust that covered everything. Some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Some things just existed, but his granddaughter was different. Yuna arrived on a transport ship from Earth in the spring. She was 23 years old, with bright eyes and a quick mind. She was studying geology at a university back home. She had come to visit her grandfather for the summer. She had also come to see the famous ship that everyone talked about, but nobody understood. On her first morning, she stood outside her grandfather's house and looked up at the hill. The ship was bigger than she expected. Its dark surface seemed to swallow the light. She felt something strange in her chest. Not fear. Something else. Curiosity. Wonder. "It's just a wreck," Tae said, standing beside her. "Nothing special. How did it crash?" Yuna asked. "Nobody knows. It was here before the colony, before any humans came to this world." Yuna looked at the angle of the ship, the way it sat in the ground. Something about it bothered her. She could not say what, but her mind kept turning it over and over like a puzzle with a missing piece. That night, she stayed up late with her computer. She pulled up old survey data. She studied images of the crash site from different angles. She measured the ship's position again and again. By morning, she had found something. She ran to her grandfather's workshop. He was fixing an old engine, his hands covered in grease. He looked up when she burst through the door. "The ship didn't crash," Yuna said, her voice shaking with excitement. "It landed. On purpose." Tae put down his tools. "What are you talking about?" "The angle. It's exactly 47.3 degrees. That's too precise for a crash. Crashes are messy, random, but this ship is pointing at something. Something specific." Tae wiped his hands on a rag. He had heard many theories about the ship over the years. Scientists with fancy words and complicated ideas. None of them had ever been right. "Pointing at what?" he asked. Yuna showed him her calculations. Lines and numbers filled the screen. She traced a path with her finger, showing how the ship's angle extended down into the ground. "It's pointing at something under your salvage yard," she said, "about 200 meters below the surface." Tae stared at the screen. He did not understand all the math, but he understood his granddaughter's face. She believed this. She really believed this. "There's nothing down there," he said. "Just rock. Maybe, or maybe there's something nobody has ever looked for." Everyone tried to open the ship. But what if the ship isn't the important thing? What if it's just a marker? A sign pointing the way? Tae looked out the window at the hill. The ship sat there, dark and silent, just like it always had. For 40 years, he had ignored it. For 40 years, everyone had been looking in the wrong place. "Let me dig," Yuna said. "Just a little. Just to see." Tay should have said no. He was old. He was tired. He did not want to chase impossible dreams. But when he looked at his granddaughter's eyes, he saw something he had not seen in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Fine, he said. But just a few meters. We probably won't find anything. They started digging that afternoon. Tay borrowed a small drilling machine from Kimday, an old friend who used to work in the mines. They thought they were crazy, but he gave them the machine anyway. The drill bit into the red rock. Dust filled the air. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Yuna watched the depth counter climb. 10 meters. 20. 30. At 47 meters, the drill hit something hard. Something that was not rock. Tay stopped the machine. He looked at the readings. Metal. Pure metal. Deep underground. Exactly where Yuna said it would be. They stared at each other in the settling dust. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them could find words for what this meant. The old ship had been pointing at something after all. And now they had found it. Yuna's hands were shaking as she reached for her communicator. They would need help. They would need equipment. They would need to dig deeper. But most of all, they needed to know what was waiting for them in the darkness below. The news spread quickly through the colony. Within 2 days, people were talking about nothing else. The old mechanic and his granddaughter had found something under the salvage yard. Something impossible. Something that should not exist. Kimday came first. He was a big man with a thick beard and hands like shovels. He had spent 30 years working in the deep mines of other worlds. When Tay called him and told him what they had found, he did not believe it. But he came anyway. That was what friends did. Han Mira arrived the next morning. She was a xenarchaeologist from Earth, a colleague of Yuna's from the university. She was small and serious, with glasses that she pushed up her nose when she was thinking. She had studied dead civilizations her whole life. She had never found anything like this. Together, the four of them began the real excavation. They worked for a week. They dug through rock and dirt. They cut through layers of stone that had not seen light for millions of years. The deeper they went, the more certain Myra became. This was not natural. Someone had built this place. Someone had hidden it on purpose. At 200 meters, they broke through into open space. Myra was the first to climb down. She stood in the darkness and turned on her light. What she saw made her forget to breathe. The chamber was huge. The ceiling rose 30 meters above her head. The walls were smooth and covered in strange symbols. They were not like any language she had ever seen. They glowed faintly, like dying stars. At the center of the room stood a pedestal made of black stone. And on the pedestal sat a single object. It was shaped like a seed. It was made of metal that seemed to flow and move even as Myra watched. It was warm to the touch. It pulsed with a soft light, like a heartbeat. Tay climbed down next, followed by Yuna and Day. They stood together in the ancient room and stared at the thing on the pedestal. Nobody spoke. There were no words for this moment. Myra walked around the chamber, studying the symbols on the walls. Her scanner hummed as it tried to make sense of what it was seeing. After a long time, she turned to the others. Her face was pale. "This vault is old," she said. "Very old. My equipment says it is at least 800,000 years old. Maybe older." They laughed nervously. "That's impossible. There were no intelligent species 800,000 years ago. The oldest civilizations in the galaxy are only 60,000 years old." "I know," Myra said. "That's what makes this impossible." Yuna approached the pedestal slowly. She could feel the warmth coming from the seed-shaped object. It seemed to call to her. It seemed to know she was there. "The ship above," she said quietly. It wasn't a crash. It was a marker. Someone left it there to show the way to this place. But who? Tay asked. And why? Nobody had an answer. Myra ran more tests. She scanned the symbols. She analyzed the metal. She tried to understand what she was seeing, but the technology was too advanced. It was like showing a computer to someone from ancient times. They might know it was important. They might even guess it was a tool, but they could never understand how it worked. Una stood in front of the pedestal for a long time. She thought about the ship on the hill. She thought about all the people who had tried to open it. All the people who had been looking in the wrong place. The builders of this vault had not wanted just anyone to find it. They had wanted someone curious, someone willing to look deeper, someone who would ask the right questions. She reached out her hand. Una, wait, Myra said, but it was too late. Una's fingers touched the warm metal of the seed. Light exploded from the object. It filled the chamber like water filling a glass. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. The air hummed with energy. And then, slowly, shapes began to form in the air above the pedestal. Stars. Thousands of stars. A map of the galaxy, floating in the darkness of the vault. Points of light blinked across the map. Some were blue. Some were green. Some were red. Myra counted them quickly. There were hundreds of points. Maybe thousands. They're vaults, Una whispered. Other vaults, just like this one, hidden all across the galaxy. And at the center of the map, one point glowed brighter than all the others. One point that everyone in the room recognized immediately. Earth. Tay felt his legs go weak. He had to sit down on the cold stone floor. His simple life as a mechanic seemed very far away now. Everything seemed far away. They knew, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Whoever built this vault, they knew about Earth. They knew about us. 800,000 years ago, they knew humans would exist. And they left these markers for us to find. Myra stared at the map with wide eyes. Her mind was racing. Everything she thought she knew about the galaxy was wrong. The oldest civilizations were not the first. There had been others before them. Others who had built roads through the stars and then disappeared. And they had been waiting for humanity all along. The seed pulsed in Una's hand. It was still warm. Still alive. Still waiting for whatever came next. Outside, the old ship sat on the hill, its nose buried in the rock. It had done its job. It had pointed the way. And now the real journey was about to begin. Mira pulled out her communicator. Her hands were shaking. We need to contact Earth, she said. We need to tell them what we found. Nobody disagreed. This was too big for one mechanic and his granddaughter. This was too big for one small colony on a forgotten world. This was going to change everything. The signal went out into the darkness of space. None of them knew it at the time. When Una touched the seed, it did more than show them a map. It sent a message. A call that traveled faster than light, across distances that the human mind could not imagine. And something heard it. 3 days after the discovery, the sky above the colony filled with ships. They came out of nowhere. One moment the sky was empty. The next moment it was full of metal and light. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, like a flock of birds. But these were not birds. These were hunters. Tay stood in his salvage yard and watched the ships descend. His heart was beating fast. His hands were shaking. 40 years of quiet life, and now the universe had come to his doorstep. A message came through every communication device on the planet. It was in a language that no one understood at first. But then it changed. It became Korean. It became English. It became every human language at once. We are the Galactic Concord, the voice said. We have watched your species for many years. We have waited for you to develop. We have been patient. But now you have found something that does not belong to you. You will give it to us. You have 30 days. Una stood beside her grandfather. She was still holding the seed in her pocket. It was warm against her leg. She did not know why, but she felt like she could not let it go. What did they want? They asked. He was standing at the door of the workshop, looking up at the ships with fear in his eyes. The vault, Myra said. The device? Everything we found. Within hours, representatives from the Concorde landed on the surface. They were not like anything the humans had ever seen. Some were tall and thin with skin like silver. Some were short and round, with too many eyes. One was made entirely of crystal. It moved slowly, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like glass breaking. I am called Voice, the crystal being said. I speak for the Concorde. We have come for the artifact. Tay stepped forward. He was just an old mechanic. He had never spoken to an alien before. He had never even left this planet. But this was his land. This was his home. The vault was under my property, he said. His voice was stronger than he expected. The ship pointed to my salvage yard. Whatever is down there, it was left for us. Voice made a sound that might have been laughter. You do not understand. The vaults were built by the first builders. They existed before any of us. They vanished before any current species learned to walk upright. The Concorde has searched for these vaults for 60,000 years. They contain the secret to transcendence, the secret to becoming something greater than mortal beings. Then why didn't you find this one? Una asked. Voice turned its crystal face toward her. Light flickered inside it. We found many vaults. We tried to open them. They destroyed themselves. The first builders left traps, protection against those who would take what was not meant for them. But we opened it, Una said. We opened it, and it showed us the map. Voice was silent for a long moment. The other aliens shifted nervously. This was clearly not what they had expected. You are a young species, Voice finally said. You do not understand what you have found. The first builders left their legacy to worthy heirs. The Concorde has proven itself over 60,000 years of peace and progress. We have united 12 species under one law. We have ended wars. We have spread across 10,000 worlds. You have barely left your home planet. You are children playing with fire. Tay looked at the alien. He thought about all the things it had said. 60,000 years. 10,000 worlds. The Concorde had done great things. But there was something wrong here. Something that did not fit. If you are so worthy, Tay said slowly, then why did the vaults destroy themselves when you tried to open them? Voice did not answer. The silence stretched out like a wire pulled too tight. We are taking the artifact, Voice finally said. This is not a request. If you resist, we will take your planet. We will take your species. You cannot stop us. The aliens turned and walked back to their ships. The crystal being moved last, its body catching the light like 1,000 diamonds. Before it left, it looked back at the small group of humans. 30 days, it said. Use them well. The ships rose into the sky and disappeared. But they did not leave. They waited in orbit, like wolves circling a wounded animal. That night, Tay sat in the vault with the others. The star map still floated above the pedestal. Earth still glowed at its center. The seeds still pulsed with warmth. We can't fight them, Tay said. We have nothing. A few defense ships. Some old weapons. They would crush us in hours. Maybe we should give it to them, Myra said quietly. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're not ready for this. Una shook her head. No, the vault opened for me. It showed us the map. The first builders wanted us to find this. Not the Concorde. Us. Tay looked at his granddaughter. She was young. She was stubborn. She reminded him of himself 50 years ago, before life had worn down his edges. "We need to contact Earth," he said. "We need to tell them everything. If we're going to face this, we need to face it together." He picked up his communicator and sent the message. It would take hours to reach Earth, hours more for a response. But it was a start. Outside, the old ship sat on the hill, dark and silent. It had brought the universe to their door. Now they had to decide what to do with it. 30 days. The clock was ticking. Earth responded within a day. The message came from the United Human Council, the government that represented all of humanity's colonies. They had seen the Concorde ships. They had heard the ultimatum. And they were not going to surrender. Admiral Cho Sung arrived at Kepler 7b 3 days later. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She brought with her 12 warships and 300 soldiers. It was not much. Against the Concorde fleet, it was almost nothing. But it was everything humanity had. "We're not here to fight," she told Tay when she met him in the vault. "We're here to buy time." "Time for what?" Tay asked. "Time to understand." The Admiral had brought someone else with her. Dr. Baekhyun was the greatest physicist in human space. She was small and quiet, with white hair and gentle hands. She had spent her life studying the mysteries of the universe. Now she stood in the ancient vault and stared at the seed with tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." For 2 weeks, Yoon studied the device. She did not sleep much. She barely ate. She ran tests and calculations. She talked to herself in numbers and equations. And slowly, piece by piece, she began to understand. "It's not a weapon," she announced on the 15th day. They were all gathered in the vault. Tay, Yuna, Mara, Day, the Admiral, and a dozen scientists. "It's not a power source either. It's a test. A test." Admiral Sung asked. Yun pointed at the symbols on the walls. The first builders didn't just hide technology in these vaults. They hid a question. The device reads the intentions of whoever touches it. When the Concorde tried to open other vaults with force, with greed, with the desire for power, the vaults saw what was in their hearts. And they destroyed themselves. But Yuna opened it. Tay said. Yun smiled at the young woman. Yes, because she opened it with curiosity, with wonder. She didn't want power. She just wanted to understand. That's what the first builders were looking for. Not the strongest species. Not the oldest. The ones with the right hearts. The room was silent. Everyone was thinking about what this meant. "The star map," Myra said slowly. "It shows all the vaults in the galaxy. But it also shows a path. A sequence. Like the vaults are supposed to be activated in a specific order." You nodded. "I noticed that too. And I've traced the sequence. It starts at the oldest vault and works its way across the galaxy. Each vault adds something to the message. Each one unlocks a piece of the puzzle. Where does it end?" Admiral Sung asked. Eun pointed at the glowing point in the center of the map. The point that had haunted them since the beginning. "Earth," she said. "The final vault is on Earth. Or rather, it's inside Earth. Deep below the surface, under the oldest mountains on the planet. And this device is the key that opens it." Yuna felt the seed pulse in her pocket. It was warm. It was waiting. It had been waiting for 800,000 years. "The Concorde has been searching for this for 60,000 years, she said. "They found many vaults. They tried to take what was inside. But they never understood what the first builders really wanted. And what do the first builders want?" They asked. Yun looked at him with sad eyes. "They want an heir. The first builders created all of this. Then they disappeared. Nobody knows why. Maybe they transcended to some higher form of existence. Maybe they simply died out. But before they left, they built these vaults. They planted these seeds across the galaxy. They left instructions that would only make sense to the right species. And then they waited. Admiral soon crossed her arms. So humanity is special. We're the chosen ones. Not chosen, Yoon said. Hoped for. The first builders didn't know who would find the vaults. They just knew what kind of species they wanted. Curious, humble, willing to learn, willing to share. She paused. The Concord is powerful. They are ancient. But they wanted the vaults for themselves. They wanted to become gods. That's not what the first builders had in mind. Outside, the Concord fleet still waited. 15 days had passed. 15 days remained. The deadline was approaching. Admiral soon contacted Earth. She told them everything Yoon had discovered. She told them about the path, the sequence, the final vault. And she told them what she thought they should do. We don't need to fight, she said. We need to finish what the first builders started. We need to activate the vaults in order and complete the sequence. If we do that, the Concord won't matter anymore. We'll have something worth more than all their ships and all their soldiers. How do we activate the other vaults? The Council asked. They're spread across the galaxy. Many of them are in Concord space. The Admiral smiled. We send the signal. Dr. Yoon believes the seed can transmit the activation key to all the vaults at once. It will take time for the signal to reach the distant ones. But once it starts, nothing can stop it. There was a long pause. Then the Council gave its answer. Do it. Tay stood next to his granddaughter as they prepared for what came next. The Concord ship still hung in the sky. Voice still waited for an answer. But humanity was not going to give them what they wanted. They were going to give them something else entirely. On the 30th day, the Concord fleet moved. 1,000 ships descended toward Kepler 7b. They filled the sky from horizon to horizon. Their weapons charged with energy that glowed like angry stars. Admiral Sung's 12 warships formed a thin line between the fleet and the planet. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. Voice sent a final message. Your time is over. Surrender the artifact now, or we will take it by force. This is your last chance. Admiral Sung stood on the bridge of her flagship. She looked at the enemy fleet. She thought about all the people on the planet below. The colonists, the scientists, the old mechanic and his granddaughter. They were counting on her. They were counting on humanity. All ships hold position, she said calmly. Do not fire unless fired upon. Our job is to buy time. Nothing more. In the vault, Tay stood before the pedestal. The seed rested in his hands. It was warm and alive, pulsing with light that matched the beating of his heart. Yuna stood beside him. Mara, Day, and Dr. Yoon watched from the edge of the chamber. Are you sure about this? Yuna asked. Tay smiled at her. His old face was lined with years of hard work and simple living. He had never expected his life to end like this. He had never expected to matter to anyone beyond his small corner of the universe. I've spent my whole life fixing broken things, he said. This is just one more repair. Yoon had explained what needed to happen. The seed required a living mind to interface with it. Someone had to carry the first builder's knowledge forward. Someone had to become the bridge between the past and the future. The process would change whoever did it. There was no going back. Tay had volunteered before anyone else could speak. He was old. He had lived a good life. If anyone was going to take this risk, it should be him. The Concord fleet is in weapons range, Myra said, watching a display on her tablet. They're preparing to fire. Tay closed his eyes. He pressed the seed against his chest, and he let go. The light came first. It poured out of the seed like water from a broken dam. It filled the vault, then the tunnels above, then the whole planet. It rose into the sky and touched the stars. The Concorde ships stopped. Their weapons went silent. Every being in the fleet felt something pass through them. Something old. Something powerful. Something that had been sleeping for 800,000 years. Tay opened his eyes, but he was not Tay anymore. He was more. He was less. He was a vessel filled with the memories of a dead civilization. He saw the universe as the first builders had seen it, young and full of promise, empty and waiting to be filled. He understood now. The first builders had not been gods. They had not been conquerors. They had been gardeners. They had planted seeds across the galaxy. They had lit fires in the darkness. They had built roads for others to follow. And then they had stepped aside. Their final message flowed through Tay like a river. We built the roads. We lit the fires. But we could not walk forward ourselves. Find those who can. The knowledge spread outward from the vault. It touched every seed in every vault across the galaxy. One by one, they woke up. One by one, they added their voices to the chorus. The sequence was completing itself. The inheritance was being claimed, but not just by humanity. Tay raised his hands and sent the knowledge everywhere. To the Concorde fleet. To every species in the galaxy. To everyone who was listening. The first builders had not left their legacy for one species. They had left it for all species. For anyone curious enough to wonder. For anyone humble enough to learn. On the bridge of the Concorde flagship, voice stood frozen. The crystal being felt the knowledge pour into it like sunlight into a dark room. It saw what the first builders had really wanted. Not power. Not transcendence. Just growth. Just connection. Just the hope that someone would carry the fire forward. For 60,000 years, the Concorde had been looking for something to take. They had never understood that the vaults were something to share. The weapons powered down. The ships pulled back. Across the galaxy, the great species of the Concorde felt something they had not felt in millennia. Shame. Wonder. Hope. Admiral soon watched the fleet retreat. She did not understand what had just happened, but she knew that the war was over before it had begun. In the vault, Tay collapsed. The seed fell from his hands, dark and quiet now. It had done its work. Una caught her grandfather before he hit the ground. "Grandfather!" she cried. Tay opened his eyes. He was himself again, small and old and tired. But there was something different in his gaze. Something deep and ancient and kind. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'm still here. I'm still me." Myra knelt beside him. "What did you see?" "Everything," Tay said. "I saw everything they wanted us to become. Not rulers of the galaxy. Not the strongest or the oldest. Just the next step. The ones who would carry the light forward." Una helped him sit up. Tears were streaming down her face. "What do we do now?" Tay looked at the vault around him. The symbols on the walls were dark now. The pedestal was empty. The first builders had given their final gift. Everything that came next was up to the living. "We share it," he said. "We share what we learned. We build new roads. We light new fires. And we hope that someday someone will be ready to take our place." Outside, the old ship still sat on the hill. Its nose was buried in the rock. Its tail pointed at the sky. It had done its job. It had shown the way, and now the way was open for everyone. Una helped her grandfather to his feet. They walked together toward the surface. The red sun was setting over the colony. The Concorde ships were gone. The sky was clear and full of stars. "How does it feel?" Una asked. To hold all that knowledge? Tay smiled and looked up at the old ship on the hill. It feels like coming home.